Adrian Moretti's phone lit up at 2:03 a.m., and one name made his hand stop above a $10 million contract. Naomi Carter. She never called him after midnight. In 3 years as his secretary, she had learned the architecture of Adrian's life down to the minute. Which calls could interrupt dinner, which names could enter his office without an appointment, which emergencies justified disturbing a meeting. Tonight's meeting justified nothing. 12 men sat around a black walnut table 40 floors above downtown Chicago, their untouched espresso cooling beneath amber pendant lights. The ventilation system breathed softly overhead. Leather chairs creaked whenever someone shifted. Beyond the glass walls, the city burned in grids of white and red, while inside, the sharp scent of coffee mixed with expensive cologne and cigar smoke clinging to wool jackets. Adrian stared at the vibrating phone. "We need your signature," Vincent Russo said, pushing the contract across polished wood. Adrian didn't touch it. Naomi's name disappeared, then appeared again. Conversation stopped one voice at a time. Adrian picked up. "Naomi." At first, there was only breathing. Faint, uneven. Behind it came a metallic clatter, then the distant hum of traffic. Adrian straightened. Naomi was usually precise enough to fit an entire crisis into 2 sentences. Now she said nothing. "Where are you?" His voice lowered. A pause. Then 3 words reached him, barely louder than the static. "I need you." The line went dead. Adrian remained still for half a second. The second hand of the brass wall clock clicked forward. He called back. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Vincent rose halfway from his chair. "Adrian, whatever this is, we have 11 minutes before." Adrian swept the contract aside and stood. The folder slid 6 feet across the table, scattering 2 silver pins onto the carpet. Every face turned toward him. "Hold the meeting." "Hold it." Vincent stared. These men flew in from 3 states. "We lose tonight, we lose the agreement." Adrian was already pulling on his charcoal overcoat. The heavy cashmere settled across his shoulders as he crossed the room. "Then don't lose it." "Where are you going?" Adrian stopped at the door. His phone was clenched so tightly against his palm that its glass edge had whitened his knuckles. He looked back once. Naomi called. That was all. Yet several men exchanged glances because everyone in that room knew Naomi Carter, the quiet black woman behind the executive desk, always immaculate in dark skirts and simple blouses, always speaking softly, always remembering what powerful men forgot. They also knew Adrian Moretti had never abandoned negotiations after they began. Not for threats, not for money, not for anyone. Until now. The elevator doors opened with a muted chime. Cold fluorescent light washed across Adrian's face as he stepped inside. Vincent followed to the threshold. "If you leave this building, I can't guarantee if there'll be a deal when you return." Adrian pressed the garage button. "Then there won't be one." The doors closed. For minutes later, his black sedan tore from the underground garage into empty streets, tires hissing over damp pavement. The steering wheel felt cold beneath his hands. The cabin smelled of leather and the bitter coffee he had abandoned hours earlier. At a red light, he called Naomi again. Voicemail. He opened the location access she had authorized for late-night work emergencies. A single marker appeared less than 7 miles away. Adrian stared at the address, then turned the wheel hard as the light changed. Behind him sat the most important night of his organization's year. Ahead was the woman who had never asked him for anything, until 2:03 a.m., when 3 words made Adrian Moretti drop everything. The location marker stopped moving beneath a flickering street lamp on West Harrison, and Adrian pressed harder on the accelerator. His phone buzzed against the center console. "Vincent." Adrian answered through the car's speakers without taking his eyes from the wet black ribbon of pavement. "You have 7 minutes," Vincent said. Behind him came muffled voices, the scrape of chairs, a glass striking wood. "They want Moretti at that table, not me." Adrian turned onto Ashland, passing shuttered storefronts washed in red traffic lights. The heater pushed dry air against his face, carrying the faint smell of leather and coffee. "You have my authority. That isn't what they came for. Tonight it is." Silence filled the speakers for a beat. "Adrian, listen to me. Whatever happened to your secretary, send someone. I can have 4 men there before you arrive." Adrian's jaw tightened. Naomi's 3 words still seemed to hang inside the car. "Not call security. Not send somebody. I need you." "No, you're risking the agreement for one employee. Adrian braked at an intersection, the seat belt locking hard across his chest. Blue-white light from a 24-hour pharmacy swept across his windshield. Don't call her that again tonight. He ended the call. Naomi's marker was now less than 2 miles away. Another call arrived almost immediately, this one from the conference room's secure line. Adrian ignored it. It rang again. He pulled beneath the concrete shadow of an elevated train track, where steel wheels thundered overhead and shook droplets from the girders. He answered. Mr. Moretti. The visiting negotiator's voice was clipped. We were told you left. Correct. Then perhaps we should leave too. Adrian watched the navigation screen count down the distance to Naomi, 1.6 miles. That's your decision. Do you understand what tonight represents? Perfectly. The man paused, apparently waiting for Adrian to bargain. Adrian did not. 10 minutes, the negotiator finally said. If you are not back at that table, our offer is withdrawn. A train screamed around the curve above him. Adrian lowered his voice. Then withdraw it. He disconnected and immediately called Vincent. You're running the room. Adrian, no delays. No excuses. If they walk, let them walk. For Naomi? Adrian looked through the windshield. A pale green traffic signal reflected across the hood like a blade of light. For the fact that she called me. He hung up. 40 floors away, Vincent stood staring at the dead phone while 11 powerful men waited around the walnut table. In the sedan, Adrian removed his watch and dropped it into the cup holder. The polished steel struck plastic with a sharp click. Time had stopped matching. At 2:17 a.m., he reached the address. It was a narrow 24-hour diner beside a closed laundromat, its neon open sign buzzing unevenly behind rain-speckled glass. Adrian parked crookedly at the curb and stepped out before the engine had fully settled. Cold air cut through his open coat. Somewhere nearby, an exhaust fan rattled, carrying the smell of fryer oil and wet concrete across the sidewalk. Through the diner window, he saw 3 empty booths, a tired waitress behind the counter, and Naomi. She sat in the farthest corner beneath a fluorescent tube that blinked every few seconds. Her navy blouse was wrinkled beneath her coat. Her work tote rested on the vinyl seat beside her, one strap twisted around her hand. A paper cup sat untouched between both palms. She looked toward the door when its bell chimed. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Naomi stood too quickly, bumping the table hard enough to spill coffee across the white laminate. Mr. Moretti? Adrian crossed the diner without looking anywhere else. I told you 3 words, she whispered. Her fingers tightened around the tote strap. I didn't tell you to leave the meeting. Adrian stopped directly in front of her, rain cooling on his shoulders while the diner's heater hummed above them. His phone began ringing again inside his coat. He took it out, looked at the conference room number, and switched the device completely off. Naomi watched the screen go black. Adrian placed the phone face down on the table. They can wait. You could lose everything tonight. Then I lose it. Her lips parted, but no words came. Adrian pulled out the chair opposite her, sat down, and fixed his attention on the woman who had finally asked him to come. I'm here, Naomi. Tell me what you need. Naomi kept her eyes on the coffee spreading toward the table's chrome edge, then reached for a stack of napkins before Adrian could ask another question. Her hands moved automatically. Blot, fold, wipe. The same quiet efficiency he had watched from behind his office doors for 3 years. The diner's fluorescent light flickered above her dark curls, and the vinyl booth squeaked beneath Adrian's weight. Burnt coffee and fryer grease hung in the overheated air. Naomi. She stopped wiping. My apartment doesn't feel safe tonight. Adrian's gaze sharpened, but he stayed seated. Did someone threaten you? No. Did someone touch you? No. Her answer came faster. She pressed the wet napkins into a tight ball. Nothing like that. Adrian waited. Naomi finally looked at him. I got home after 11. I tried to sleep. I couldn't. Her thumb rubbed repeatedly over the twisted leather strap of her tote. Every sound in the hallway made me sit up. Every car stopping outside made me check the window. I kept telling myself I was being ridiculous. A delivery truck groaned past the diner windows, washing the booth in white headlights. Naomi flinched before catching herself. Adrian saw it. He did not ask for evidence. He did not demand a name. He simply stood. Come on. Naomi blinked. Where? Somewhere you can breathe. Mr. Moretti, I can take a cab. Adrian picked up her tote. You called me. That doesn't make me your responsibility. No, his voice remained level. It makes me the person you chose. The waitress looked over as Adrian placed two $20 bills beside the untouched coffee. Naomi reached for her bag, but he was already walking toward the door. She followed him into the cold. The temperature had dropped enough to turn their breath white. Tires whispered across wet asphalt, and the neon sign behind them buzzed like an electrical insect. At the sedan, Naomi stopped. I need my work laptop. In the bag. She nodded. Adrian opened the passenger door, set the tote inside, then removed his overcoat and placed it across the seat before she could protest. Get in. Your coat, Naomi. She studied him for a second, then slid into the car. Adrian closed the door and rounded the hood. Inside, the heater came alive with a low rush. Naomi tucked her hands beneath the coat, her fingers disappearing into charcoal cashmere. Adrian started the engine. His dark phone remained switched off in the cup holder beside his watch. You should turn that back on, she said. Not yet. They're waiting for you. They can continue without me. They won't. Adrian shifted into drive. Then they'll learn. Naomi turned toward him. Streetlights moved across her face in alternating bands of gold and shadow as they pulled away from the curb. You don't understand. I called because I needed 5 minutes. A familiar voice. I didn't ask you to abandon your entire night. And if I'd sent Vincent? Her mouth tightened. I wouldn't have gotten into his car. Security? She shook her head. Anyone else? Silence. Adrian's hands settled more firmly on the wheel. There it was. Not a mystery to solve. Not an enemy to chase. Just a woman who had spent years making herself easy for everyone else to depend on. Discovering at 2 in the morning that she had exactly one person she trusted enough to call. At the next intersection, Adrian turned away from the route back downtown. Naomi noticed immediately. Your office is the other way. I know. Then where are we going? My place. Guest floor. Separate entrance. Staff on site. You can lock the door from inside, and nobody enters unless you say so. Naomi stared through the windshield. The dashboard glowed pale blue against her hands. And the meeting? Adrian reached down, took his phone from the cup holder, and powered it on. Notifications flooded the screen before it finished loading. He ignored everyone, called Vincent, and put the phone to his ear. I'm not coming back tonight, Adrian said. Naomi's head snapped toward him. Finish without me. He ended the call before Vincent could answer. Then Adrian placed the phone face down again and drove on. Naomi slowly released the tote strap she had been gripping since he arrived. You really dropped everything. Adrian looked at the empty road ahead. No, he said quietly. I finally decided what wasn't worth more than you. Naomi waited until the sedan turned beneath the stone archway of Adrian's residence before she reached for the door handle. Stop the car. Adrian braked beside the private entrance. Warm security lights spilled across the windshield, turning the wet pavement bronze, while the engine idled with a low mechanical hum. Beyond the glass doors, polished limestone reflected the glow of brass fixtures. Naomi pulled Adrian's overcoat from her lap and folded it carefully across the passenger seat. Take me back. Adrian looked at her. To your apartment? To the office. No, you don't get to decide that for me. Her voice remained quiet, but she opened the door and stepped into the cold. Adrian followed. The night air smelled of rain and damp stone. Somewhere behind the building, a ventilation fan droned steadily. Naomi stood beneath the awning with her tote against her ribs. You left 12 men sitting around a table because I couldn't hold myself together for one night. That isn't what happened. It's exactly what happened. She pulled out her laptop. Its aluminum casing caught the amber light. I prepared that meeting for 6 weeks. I coordinated every schedule, revised every document, sat through every change because tonight mattered to you. Adrian stepped closer, stopping several feet away. And at 2 in the morning, you mattered more. Naomi's fingers froze on the zipper. Don't say things like that. Why? Because tomorrow I still have to sit outside your office. A gust pushed cold mist beneath the awning. Naomi tucked loose curls behind one ear and looked directly at him. I am your secretary. If you destroy a major agreement because I called you, every person in that organization will look at me and see the reason. Let them look at me. They won't. She opened the laptop against her forearm and woke the screen. Notifications covered it. They'll look at the black woman behind your desk who suddenly became important enough to make Adrian Moretti walk away. Adrian's jaw shifted once. Naomi turned the screen toward him. Vincent had sent 4 messages. The latest was only seconds old. They're still here. Adrian read it. Naomi did too. Go back. I already made my decision. Then make another. Adrian reached for the laptop, but Naomi pulled it away. No. You listened when I called. Now listen while I'm standing in front of you. The security guard inside deliberately turned his attention elsewhere. Rain ticked against the metal awning. Adrian said nothing. Naomi drew a slow breath. I needed you for that moment. You came. That mattered. She closed the laptop with a crisp snap. But if helping me means I become an excuse for you to burn down everything around yourself, then I'll never call you again. That landed harder than any threat from the conference room. Adrian's hand dropped to his side. You mean that? Naomi's eyes stayed steady. Yes. He looked through the glass doors, then toward the sedan. For years, people had obeyed Adrian because refusing him carried consequences. Naomi had just refused him because accepting too much carried consequences of its own. He reached into the car, took his phone, and powered it on. The screen flooded with missed calls. He dialed Vincent. Tell them I'm coming back. Naomi's shoulders lowered slightly. Good. Adrian raised one finger before she could move. We're coming back. She stared at him. Absolutely not. You said they'll blame you if you're absent. So your solution is to parade me into that room? No. My solution is that you walk in through the front door as the woman who built the meeting they're still sitting in. Naomi studied him beneath the warm light, rain whispering 3 feet away. Then she put the laptop back into her tote. I go in as your secretary. Nothing else. Adrian opened the passenger door for her, but did not touch her. Your terms. She hesitated, then climbed inside. Adrian returned behind the wheel, turned the sedan toward downtown, and called Vincent again. Keep every seat filled, he said. And Vincent, when Naomi Carter walks into that room, nobody treats her like the reason I left. He glanced toward her as Chicago's lights rose ahead of them. They treat her like the reason I came back. The conference room doors opened at 3:17 a.m., and every conversation died before Naomi crossed the threshold. White recessed lights washed the 30-foot walnut table in a sterile glow, while untouched espresso cooled beside leather folders and crystal water glasses. The room smelled of coffee, expensive cologne, and the faint metallic chill of overworked air conditioning. Adrian entered 2 steps behind her. He did not hurry. He did not explain. Vincent rose first, his chair scraping sharply across the stone floor. Across from him, 3 men in tailored suits watched Naomi place her tote beside the chair normally reserved for an assistant. One of them, Dominic Russo, leaned back and rolled a silver pen between his fingers. So this is what stopped the meeting. Naomi's hand paused over her laptop. Adrian removed his coat. Choose your next sentence carefully. Russo's pen stopped. Naomi looked at Adrian, then deliberately pulled out her chair herself. I can answer for myself. Adrian's eyes held hers for half a second before he stepped away. Then answer. Naomi opened her laptop. The soft startup chimes sounded unnaturally loud. You were discussing the revised distribution agreement when Mr. Moretti left. Section 14 still exposes both sides to a termination dispute if the quarterly threshold falls below 82%. Russo gave a thin smile. We have attorneys for that. Your attorneys wrote the language. Naomi turned the screen toward him. I tracked the revisions. She slid a printed page across the walnut. Version 11 protected both parties. Version 12 removed 6 words. Put them back, and nobody here has to pretend this meeting failed because a secretary made a phone call. Silence settled beneath the hum of the vents. Russo looked down. Vincent leaned over the document, then reached for the previous draft. Paper whispered against paper. She's right, he said. Russo's smile disappeared. Adrian remained standing near the windows, Chicago glowing in fractured gold behind him. He could have taken control. Instead, he watched Naomi straighten the documents with hands that had trembled less than an hour earlier. Russo pushed the page back. Fine. Restore it. Naomi did not move. There's another condition. Several heads turned. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Naomi, Vincent murmured. She closed the laptop halfway. Mr. Moretti returned because I asked him to. That does not make my private life available for discussion at this table. If anyone intends to use tonight to question my professionalism, say it while I'm sitting here. The ice machine in the adjoining bar clicked once. Nobody spoke. Russo glanced toward Adrian. You allow your staff to address partners this way. Adrian walked to the head of the table, the soles of his shoes striking stone in measured beats. No, Naomi's chin lifted. Adrian placed both palms on the walnut. I allow people who earned their place in this room to defend it. He looked around the table. And she just saved an agreement the rest of you were prepared to sign incorrectly. Russo's face tightened. This organization cannot run on personal exceptions. Agreed, Adrian said. Which is why there won't be one. He pulled out the chair beside his own. Naomi stays for the remainder of the negotiation as executive secretary, with authority over document control. Any revision passes through her before it reaches me. Naomi stared at the empty chair. It was not protection. It was responsibility, visible and undeniable. She picked up her laptop and moved beside him. For the next 40 minutes, pages changed hands, signatures shifted, and voices lowered whenever Naomi corrected a clause. At 3:59, Russo finally signed. His fountain pen scratched across the paper. Adrian signed last. Then Russo stood and buttoned his jacket. One phone call, he said quietly, looking at Naomi, and he abandoned this entire table. Naomi rose. Before Adrian could speak, she answered, no. One phone call showed him there are things more important than this table. Russo looked toward Adrian, waiting for contradiction. Adrian simply closed the signed folder. She's right. The power in the room shifted without another sound. When the others filed out, Naomi remained beside the table, staring at the signature pages. Adrian approached, but stopped several feet away. You asked me to come back. I did. Naomi closed the folder and placed it in his hands. And now I need you to understand why I called you in the first place. Naomi kept her hand on the closed folder until Adrian stopped reaching for it. Beyond the conference room glass, Chicago burned in scattered amber squares, and the ventilation system breathed cold air across the polished walnut, carrying the bitter smell of abandoned espresso. I didn't call because I needed you to rescue me, she said. Adrian's fingers curled slowly against the back of a leather chair. Naomi opened her tote and removed the same plain envelope she had carried through the night. She did not offer it to him. Instead, she set it beneath her palm. At 1:46 this morning, I was ready to leave your company. The refrigerator behind the private bar clicked off, leaving the room so quiet that the distant elevator bell sounded like it came from inside the walls. Adrian's jaw shifted. Why? Naomi met his eyes. Because I spent 3 years making myself useful enough that nobody could dismiss me, and somehow that turned into everyone assuming I would tolerate anything. She slid the envelope across the table. A resignation letter showed through the open edge. Adrian looked at it, but did not touch it. Russo, not just Russo. Her voice stayed level. The jokes, the interruptions, men asking me to bring coffee while I'm explaining the contract they're about to sign. People calling me the girl at Adrian's desk after I've spent 12 hours keeping their meetings from collapsing. She drew a breath, then tapped the envelope once. Tonight was supposed to be my last night. Adrian's gaze dropped to the resignation letter. The paper looked almost white beneath the recessed lights. Then why call me? Naomi turned toward the windows. Her reflection floated against the black glass, small beside his. Because when everything finally became too much, I realized there was one person I still needed to know whether I mattered to. Adrian did not answer. His phone vibrated across the table. Vincent's name flashed on the screen. Adrian silenced it without looking away from her. 3 words, he said. That was all you gave me. Naomi's thumb rubbed the rough paper edge of the envelope. I need you. The words landed differently now. Adrian walked around the table, but stopped several feet from her. No touch. No command. And I left the biggest negotiation of the year. I know. I would do it again. Naomi's eyes lifted. Adrian picked up the resignation letter, folded it once along its existing crease, then placed it back in front of her instead of tearing it up. But that doesn't mean you owe me your job. The elevator bell sounded again outside. Adrian walked to the conference room door and opened it. Vincent stood in the corridor with 2 security men and a phone in his hand. Adrian, Russo's people want another, tomorrow. They're downstairs. Then they can wait downstairs. Vincent stared past him toward Naomi. Adrian's voice lowered. And starting now, nobody in this organization speaks about her as though she belongs to me, works beneath everyone else, or exists to absorb disrespect. Vincent gave one short nod. Adrian closed the door. That simple movement changed the room more completely than shouting could have. Naomi picked up the resignation letter. The paper crackled between her fingers. You can't fix 3 years in one night. No. Adrian loosened his tie and laid it beside the signed agreement. So don't stay because I came when you called. He pulled out the chair opposite him and sat, placing himself at her eye level. Stay only if tomorrow can be different. Naomi studied him beneath the hard white lights. Then she tore the resignation letter cleanly in half. Adrian's shoulders moved with one quiet breath, but Naomi raised a finger before he could speak. That isn't a yes. She placed both halves on the walnut between them. At 9 tomorrow morning, you're going to sit in front of every senior man who treated me like furniture, and you're going to listen while I tell them exactly what changes. Adrian looked at the torn letter, then back at her. 9 o'clock. Naomi collected her laptop and walked toward the door. And if you interrupt me once, I walk. Adrian opened the door for her. Then I won't interrupt. For the first time that night, Naomi stepped through before him, and the most powerful man in the building followed. At 8:59 the next morning, Naomi placed 12 printed pages on the walnut table and remained standing. Sunlight cut through the conference room windows in pale gold bands, warming one side of the leather chairs while the air conditioning left the other side cold enough to raise goosebumps. Fresh coffee scented the room. Nobody touched it. Adrian sat at the head of the table, jacket buttoned, phone face down beside his right hand. Vincent occupied the nearest chair. Russo had returned with 2 senior associates, and 4 department heads filled the opposite side. Naomi watched the second hand on the wall clock reach 12. 9 o'clock. She pressed the remote. The screen behind Adrian lit with a single page titled Workplace Protocol. Russo exhaled through his nose. We interrupted an international negotiation for an employee grievance meeting. Adrian's fingers shifted toward the table. Naomi looked at him. He stopped. She had given him one condition. He kept it. This isn't about hurt feelings, Naomi said. She walked around the table, placing a document before each man. The paper was heavy beneath her fingertips, still warm from the printer. It's about whether competence has value here when it comes from someone without your title. Russo pushed his copy aside. Naomi pushed it back. Read page 3. His eyes hardened. Excuse me. Page 3. Chairs creaked. Somewhere beyond the glass wall, an office phone rang twice before going silent. Russo opened the packet. Naomi pointed to a list of meetings from the previous quarter. 27 negotiations. I prepared 23. I corrected contract language in 11. I prevented scheduling conflicts in 9. And during 7 of those meetings, I was asked to leave after serving coffee, then called back when somebody needed information I had already provided. Nobody laughed. Naomi clicked the remote again. No secrets appeared. No hidden conspiracy. Just numbers, responsibilities, and names attached to decisions everyone in the room remembered making. Starting today, administrative staff attend meetings their work directly supports. Their recommendations enter the minutes under their names. And nobody uses an assistant's job title as permission to humiliate them. One department head shifted. You're dictating policy now? Naomi turned toward Adrian. No. I'm asking whether the man who dropped everything at 2 in the morning understands what brought me to that call. Every face moved toward him. Adrian finally stood. The leather chair rolled backward with a low rasp. I do. Russo leaned forward. Careful, Adrian. You changed the rules because one secretary called you in the middle of the night, and everyone will know exactly where your judgment went. Adrian walked slowly along the table until he reached Naomi. He did not stand in front of her. He stopped beside her. My judgment was wrong long before that call. The room went still. Even Naomi's hand stopped above the remote. Adrian looked at the man who had spent years measuring his authority by how rarely he admitted error. I saw what she carried because it made my life easier. I saw what she tolerated because confronting it would have made my life harder. His voice never rose. At 2 in the morning, she gave me 3 words. I heard them because she had reached the point where she could not give me 4. Naomi lowered the remote. Russo stood abruptly, his chair striking the table. Then choose. Her demands, or the way this organization has always operated. Adrian picked up Naomi's protocol, uncapped his pen, and signed the final page. He slid it toward Vincent. Effective immediately. Russo stared at the signature. Adrian turned to Naomi. And one more change. He removed the executive secretary designation from the folder prepared the night before and tore it cleanly across the center. You don't sit beside me because I decided you belong there. He placed a new blank roll authorization sheet in front of her. You decide where you belong. For the first time since that 2 a.m. call, the room was waiting for Naomi's answer instead of Adrian's. Naomi left the blank authorization sheet untouched for 11 seconds. The wall clock ticked above the conference room door, each click cutting through the low mechanical hum of the vents, while morning sunlight burned across the walnut table and warmed the black ink of Adrian's signature. Russo remained standing. This is absurd. Naomi looked at him, then at the men seated around him. Finally, she picked up Adrian's pen. Director of Executive Operations, she said. Vincent's eyebrows lifted. Naomi wrote the title herself, the pen scratching steadily across the paper. Direct access to contract review, authority to stop any executive meeting when procedure is violated, and responsibility for implementing the protocol we just approved. Russo gave a dry laugh. You think one phone call qualifies you to run executive operations? Naomi capped the pen. No. 3 years of doing half the job without the title qualifies me. The room went silent. Adrian did not smile. He simply turned the authorization sheet toward himself and read every line. Naomi watched his hand settle beside the signature box. There's one condition, she said. His pen stopped. Say it. I report to the office, not to you personally. If I disagree with you in that room, I say it. If you're wrong, I document it. And if anyone assumes your decision tonight means I'm protected from accountability, you correct them before I have to. Russo folded his arms. You're letting your secretary dictate terms to you. Adrian signed. The nib pressed hard enough to leave a faint impression in the paper beneath it. No, he said. I'm listening to my director of executive operations define her responsibilities. Russo's chair remained empty behind him. Then you can explain this to the partners without me. He reached for his folder. Naomi moved first. She placed her hand on it. Not forcefully, just enough to stop the leather from sliding. Russo stared at her fingers. Before you leave, Naomi said, page 6. We're finished. No, we're implementing the policy you challenged. Adrian remained where he was. Naomi opened Russo's packet to the acknowledgement page and rotated it toward him. You can disagree with the rule. You cannot pretend it doesn't exist. The air conditioner clicked off. The sudden quiet exposed the distant traffic 30 floors below and the faint smell of roasted coffee drifting from the hallway. Russo looked toward Adrian, expecting intervention. Adrian leaned back. She's running this meeting. The words changed everything. Russo's eyes returned to Naomi. For several seconds, neither moved. Then he took the pen and signed. Naomi removed her hand from the folder. Thank you. Russo left without another word. The glass door closed behind him with a soft hydraulic hiss. One by one, the department heads signed their acknowledgments. Vincent collected the pages and walked out last, leaving Naomi and Adrian alone beneath the brightening skyline. Naomi gathered the abandoned coffee cups herself out of habit. Adrian reached for one at the same moment. She stopped. So did he. Then he took the entire tray from her hands. That's going to take some practice, Naomi said. Apparently. He carried it to the sideboard. The small gesture would have looked meaningless anywhere else. In that room, after everything that had happened since 2 a.m., it landed differently. Naomi folded the torn halves of her resignation letter and slipped them into her tote. Adrian noticed. Keeping those? Yes. Why? She looked toward him. So, I remember how close 3 words came to being the last ones I ever said to you. Adrian's hand tightened around the edge of the tray. The ceramic cups gave a faint clink. Naomi. She waited. He crossed the room, stopping several feet away, the same respectful distance he had kept hours earlier. When that phone rang, I didn't know what I was leaving the meeting for. His voice dropped. I only knew it was you. Naomi's eyes stayed on his. Adrian took one measured breath. And I finally understood that losing the deal would have cost me money. Not answering you would have cost me something I couldn't replace. The clock clicked once behind them. Naomi slowly set her new authorization sheet on the table between them. Then prove you understand the difference tomorrow and the day after that. Adrian nodded. I will. She picked up her bag and headed for the door, then stopped with her hand on the cool brass handle. Good. Because tomorrow morning, I'm moving my desk out of your office. Adrian froze mid-step, and Naomi opened the door before he could answer. The next morning, Naomi's old desk stood empty outside Adrian's office. The brass nameplate was gone, leaving 2 pale screw marks in the dark wood, while cardboard boxes whispered across the carpet as facilities staff moved her files down the hall. Sunlight spilled through the east windows, catching dust above the floor, and the office smelled of fresh coffee and printer toner. Adrian arrived at 8:04 and stopped beside the empty chair. For 3 years, Naomi had been there before him. Today, there was only a clean blotter and the faint circular stain from her coffee mug. He did not call her. At 8:30, he walked 40 feet down the executive corridor and knocked on a door whose new frosted glass lettering read Naomi Bennett, Director of Executive Operations. Come in. Naomi sat behind her own desk, sleeves rolled neatly to her elbows, reviewing the revised distribution agreement. Adrian remained at the threshold. The partners approved the final language. I saw. She marked a paragraph with a blue pen. Russo's acknowledgement. File. Department heads. All signed before 7. Naomi finally looked up. Adrian placed a paper cup on the corner of her desk. Black coffee, 1 sugar. He remembered. You have 10 minutes, she said. Then I'm chairing implementation. Adrian sat across from her, instead of taking the chair beside her desk. 10 is enough. Weeks passed. The new protocol stopped being paper and became practice. Assistants whose work supported negotiations stayed in the room. Corrections carried names. Interruptions were recorded. When one senior manager snapped his fingers at an administrative coordinator during a Friday briefing, Adrian said nothing first. He looked at Naomi. She closed the folder in front of her. The leather cover struck the table with a flat, unmistakable sound. Try that again, she said. And you finished this meeting without staff support. The manager lowered his hand. Adrian never intervened. He did not need to. By late fall, the building sounded different around Naomi. Doors opened for meetings she was expected to lead. People waited when she spoke. Her old tote still sat beside her desk, and inside its smallest pocket remained the 2 halves of the resignation letter. One night, after the elevators had quieted and rain tapped softly against the 30-story windows, Adrian found her standing alone in the conference room where everything had changed. The city below shimmered silver and red through wet glass. A forgotten cup of coffee had gone cold beside the signed protocol. It's after midnight, he said. Naomi checked the clock. You keeping track of my hours now? Learning from previous mistakes. A small smile touched her mouth. Adrian stopped across the table. I've thought about that call every day. Naomi's fingers rested against the smooth walnut. So have I. I spent years believing people called me because they needed what I could control. His gaze stayed on hers. That night, you needed me to show up. Nothing more. Rain traced another line down the glass. And you did, Naomi said. Adrian nodded once. But showing up once was the easy part. Naomi studied him for several seconds, then reached into her tote and removed the torn resignation letter. She placed both pieces together on the table. The edges still matched. I don't need this anymore. She fed the halves into the shredder beside the credenza. The motor hummed briefly, then stopped. Adrian watched the last strip disappear. Naomi picked up her coat. I'm going home. Adrian reached automatically for his phone, ready to summon a car, then caught himself. Do you want a ride? Naomi looked at him, recognizing the difference. Yes. They walked toward the elevators side by side. No secretary trailing her boss. No frightened woman waiting to be rescued. No powerful man expecting gratitude. When the elevator doors opened, Adrian held them, and Naomi stepped inside first. Months earlier, 3 words had made the most feared man in the room drop everything. By the time he understood why, they had taught him that real power was not being needed. It was becoming someone worthy of the call.